And welcome back to Auto Wisdom. Today we are sitting behind the wheel of a 2022 Mazda MX-5 Miata Club. This specific MX-5 is of the ND2 chassis, which is the most recent generation of the Mazda Miata. And this is a fairly special car because the Miata sort of sits in a class of its own. It rides on a bespoke chassis that is not shared with any other platform or any other car. It's a dedicated two-door roadster coupe, and it really doesn't have much competition when it comes to other cars in its own segment. The only other car that I can personally really think of that's on sale today is the Toyota GR86. The Miata was first developed in the early 1990s as part of the NA generation, and it was a car that many enthusiasts quickly fell in love with. As a result, Mazda decided to carry on its legacy for many decades to come with the later NB, NC, and ND generations, which come in two parts. Now, this one being a 2022, it is of the ND2 as stated previously, and it's the Club trim. So it comes as standard with a lovely 6-speed manual transmission and a limited slip rear differential out back. Power is sourced by a naturally aspirated 2-liter inline 4-cylinder that outputs around 181 horsepower and about 151 pound-feet of torque. All right, so we're at a complete standstill. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of a launch, soft launch. Oh yeah. This car feels very raw. It is a very driver-focused experience with a relatively firm suspension setup, double wishbone up front with an aluminum multi-link in the rear. You also have a non-divorce suspension setup in the rear, meaning that the shock and the spring are attached as one unit, and you get a lot of fine-tuning and precision out of the suspension setup with this car. It's not the quickest thing in the world, and power is by no means what this car is trying to boast, although 181 horsepower with a 23 50-pound curb weight does feel fairly peppy in back roads. But the Miata is more of a momentum car. It's designed to really just carry a lot of speed through corners, and when you keep it high up in the RPM band, it's a lot of fun to drive. Now, this specific Miata as well, in addition to the fact that it is a club spec, it's also fitted with the Brembo, Recaro, and BBS package, which includes Brembo brakes up front to help with increased stopping power when you're literally on the track or through canyon roads. You also get some 17-inch forged aluminum BBS wheels, which look quite lovely and help to complement the design language of this car. And you also get factory Recaro seats that help to bolster you pretty well. If you've ever sat in a Recaro Sportster aftermarket seat in any sort of car, this is very similar to what it feels like. It's sort of like a hybrid between a bucket seat and a regular street seat. And the driving position of this car is very, very nice. Great visibility outward. Not much of the interior is blocking your outward view of the car. Very easy to read gauge cluster as well, with the tachometer being front and center. And overall, it's a very non-intimidating car to drive, especially when you're taking it through back roads and really enjoying this car to the most of its capabilities. Going back to the suspension setup, the damping is really good. The spring rates feel fairly stiff as they translate a lot of the undulations and variations of the road surface into the cabin of the car. Even my camera right now is shaking quite a bit, as you guys might be able to tell. But it provides a lot of communication to the driver, and as a result of that, you really feel like you know what the car is telling you. There's a little bit of body roll from the dampers, but I actually prefer that on the street because it helps to aid in driver comfort, and then on back roads, especially in a public setting where the roads are generally not always the smoothest, those Bilstein dampers help to absorb the bumps quite well. This 2-liter engine revs fairly high as well, with a red line of 7,500 RPM, and it sounds pretty good as well. It's not as charismatic as a naturally aspirated Honda 4-cylinder engine that is cracking VTEC at the higher RPMs, but it provides a nice exhaust note and an induction note as well that resonates through the cabin, especially with the aftermarket ISR exhaust system that this owner has fitted to the car as well. Essentially, it's a muffler delete, which enhances the sound of the car mainly. It also sheds some weight, approximately 20 pounds or a little bit more than that, according to what the owner told me. I can really appreciate the philosophy behind a car like the Mazda Miata. It's a car that does have its compromises. It compromises some degree of practicality and a little bit of daily drivability as well, just because of the limited cargo space and limited passenger seat room. But as a result of that, when Mazda envisioned the development of this car, they really wanted to prioritize something that was going to focus on the best of what a driver's car can give you. A really communicative chassis that feels quite stable and rigid through back roads, and a high revving naturally aspirated engine, which you really can't find nowadays, especially in 4-cylinder trim. Again, only with other cars like the GR86, which is pretty much the main competition to this thing. This 6-speed manual is also an absolute highlight of this car. It feels extremely direct and engaging. It's notchy without being overly notchy to the point where you're struggling to find the correct gear to be in. It feels direct. The throws are relatively short as well. And you have excellent positioning between the distance from the gear shifter itself and the steering wheel. Pedal placement as well is quite nice, very easy to heel toe and rev match in this car, and it's very easy to learn manual on if you're new to the 6-speed manual driving world, with a very light clutch throw, and it's very easy to tell the engagement point of the clutch as well. Here we go. Feel out of this car, and it's pretty much bone stock, like I said, aside from the exhaust system. Those Brembo brakes up front help to also provide a great deal of confidence in terms of stopping power. You get a very progressive brake pedal feel. I believe the owner has fitted some aftermarket track pads as well, so the braking performance of this car is quite exceptional, and I'm sure it's a little bit better than stock. Man, this car actually picks up in the top end of the RPM range. And 181 horsepower feels very good for a car that has such a low curb weight. Very, very impressive feeling engine out of this car. And the steering is also quite direct. It's very, very sharp steering. You don't need a lot of steering input to get a lot of reaction out of the car, which I like, because when you're constantly taking this car through these back roads, as this car was designed for, or even on a track, you don't need to turn the wheel a whole lot to get really good steering. And even though it's an electronically assisted unit, I do feel quite a bit through the steering wheel as well. This chassis feels so rigid and very, very stiff. I feel everything coming through it, from the little bits of gravel hitting the fender liners to the air flying right over you. This car is not pretending to be, you know, an absolute technological missile that's going to hit 200 miles an hour on the freeway and do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. It's just a pure driver's car, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's totally gimmick free. It's advertised as such, and that's why people have come to love these cars. I also think it looks quite nice. This ND2 generation really from a design standpoint, looks very nice with its traditional roadster design, the shorter wheelbase with the fairly aggressive front end. I really like the design of the sharpened headlights, and it's really a car that gives you the old sports car experience of the early 2000s and the 1990s, but in a modern day package. That on its own is extremely rare. If you haven't driven a Miata and you have opinions on it, I would reserve whatever your opinion is on the vehicle and drive one first before making any statements on it, because I can almost guarantee you that it will change your mind. This really is a lovely car to drive. As I stated previously, it may have some driver compromises. It may not be the most practical car for every single individual. It's not the fastest thing in the world. It's not going to blow your socks off in terms of straight line speed or even just overall performance in general. It makes up for all of those deficiencies with just a really excellent driving experience, and you can put the top down. If you live in a place like Southern California, where we are fortunate enough to review this car in today, it is absolutely perfect on a lovely spring morning to just throw the top down, go cruising by the beach, go hit some back roads, and you have the sunshine out and the air flowing right over your head. Really great experience overall. Listen to that, so much engine noise coming through the cabin, I love it. I personally believe that the Mazda Miata, especially of the current ND2 generation, is slept on quite heavily. A lot of people just tend to blow these cars off simply because on paper they may not have the most impressive performance metrics. But I really would just encourage anybody that's interested in one to get behind the wheel of it, drive it, and then formulate your own opinion on the vehicle, because I think there's a very good chance you'll change your mind after driving it. It feels like a proper sports car, and it has every right to be a proper sports car as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the review and found it informative. As always, please make sure to go ahead and support the channel by leaving a like and subscribing down below. Feel free to leave your comments in the comment section as well, and I will catch you all in the next one. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.